Welcome to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling. You are about to discover impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you, so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Be sure you visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now tune in, get ready, and enjoy the journey of emerging as a leader of exception in the 21st century.
Welcome, everyone, to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast. I'm your host, Vicki Noethling, coming to you from Roswell, Georgia. The goal of this podcast is to bring topics and guests that will empower you to become the confident leader and take your business and your life to the next level. Today, I'm very excited to have with me Eric G. And let me tell you just a little bit about Eric. Eric has administered personality-based life coaching for more than 20 years. He's built a successful education company that uses his personality typing method to better the lives of more than 20,000 students, parents, and teachers. As the creator of Utopia Project website and the Utopia 16 assessment, he has disseminated his method to over 500,000 users since the website's creation in 2016. His coaching program has been used in companies like Hulu, Disney, universities, and over 40 school districts. So we're going to talk about the question, what's your personality type? Please join me in welcoming my guest, Eric G. Eric.
How's it going? How are you, Vicki?
It's going great. You know, early in my career, one of my duties was to share personality indexes to try to determine which person was best to be a manager for this fast food company I worked for. And it was very insightful because, you know, you just think, well, everybody could do every job and everything. But it really brought to light some people that, you know, really, if you would promote them, you were really setting them up for failure or for a very frustrating next several years. But before we get into all of this, I do want to ask you two simple questions, and then we'll get into the heart of it. First, just tell everybody, where do you live? Where do you call home?
I'm in Los Angeles, California, all over in the West Coast here. So I guess we're doing the bi-coastal thing right now.
Yes, I spent many years now in and out of California as for work and Toastmasters. So definitely know that area for sure. So let's talk about your journey. What really said to you, oh gosh, you got to do this? You know, there is just a gap here. There's a need, and I can help and I can fill it. And so talk about that journey and maybe some of the aha moments or the pitfalls that you felt along the way.
You know, I think with everyone, it's always starts on the personal level, right? Like growing up, you know, I started realizing at an early age that I was a little different than a lot of the kids around me, and different by just values. You know, like I think sometimes we assume that everyone eventually, when they grow up, they're going to value the same thing. Like how many people have told their parents, you know, I don't want kids, and then their parents are like, no, don't worry, but when you grow up, you'll change your mind. And that's not always the case with some people, right? Like it's we don't necessarily change. I think we can grow into better versions or worse versions of ourselves. And as a kid, I just felt like, okay, you know, like some of the things that I want to do aren't the things that I'm being told I should want to do.
Yeah.
You know, and I love that you mentioned when you were working and like realizing like, oh, you know, certain people, it hurts them to get promoted. Because that reminds me of one of my students who, you know, funny enough, I encouraged her to drop out of high school because she didn't like it anymore. And I just encouraged, like I said, hey, are you going to get your GED? Make sure you do that. You get a job right after. And she's like, no, I want to do all those things. You know, I'm not lazy. I just don't want to learn in school anymore. I just want to actually do things in life. And so she got a job, eventually became a barista at Starbucks. And it was funny
Wow.
because she knew herself well enough to where when they wanted to promote her to assistant manager, she was just like, no, 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 I don't want that responsibility. I kind of just like using the machines. I kind of like just being in the back here because of her personality type. It was a personality type
Mhm.
that liked doing things, using tools, didn't necessarily like managing people. She was not particularly
Yeah.
good at that. But it's great that she knew that because, like you said, we're not all capable to do things, or even if we are,
Hmm.
it doesn't mean that we're going to like it. And that's why it's
Yeah.
probably good to find out what our personality type is, like I did at an early age, because then you can understand, oh, these are the things that I probably geared to like. And if I like
Yeah.
them, then I'll probably do them more. And if I do them more, then obviously I'll get good at them.
Right. Right. And it's interesting too. Um, and I don't know that it's maybe so much true today, but uh, in my early career, tenure for people, especially teachers, I guess, was a big deal. And I married to a husband who was a teacher. There were several examples of people that, because they had tenure, were able to stay in that role as a teacher when there were people that were much more engaging, much more impactful for the students, and they were let go. And that
Mhm.
always bothered me. It's like, well, shouldn't we be looking for the person most suited for that job and keep those people?
Yeah, I talk about that in the book. There are different personality packs. Like there's 16 different personality types, but you can
Mm-hmm.
also, the big subgroups can be divided to 4 packs. I call them packs because the personality types are animals. And one
Mm-hmm.
of the major packs that makes about half the population value safety and security. And that's great. And I think it's great that half of our population, that's the core value because that's kind of what society is like built on. But
Right.
at its worst, it gets to that desire of certainty. And obviously, we know
Mm-hmm.
that nothing in life is certain, but what makes us feel more certain is if we've seen someone do it before. So I think that's where tenure comes in. And that particular personality pack, I call them gatherers, probably makes up about 80 to 85% of people in education. That's just a sector that really draws them
Mm-hmm.
in. And so that makes sense. They'd be like, oh, well, I only trust what I've seen before because I'm all about safety and security. And what's safest and most conservative is to like go with what worked. So let's just go with this person because they've been doing this job for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
I don't particularly agree with that. Of course, I'm not in that personality pack, but I just, knowing personality types helps me understand at their worst, they'll just
Exactly.
reflexively go towards tenure or
Yeah,
experience.
it's a safer choice.
Hmm.
No rocking the boat.
Yes,
And
that's definitely a no-no. They'd rather have it stay the same and be they'd rather on a scale of 1 to 10, they'd rather have it be the same 5 or 6 than try for a 10 and maybe get a 2, and
yeah, that's right.
yeah, yeah.
So, what differentiates your book, and you have a book about personality from the other personality books that are out there already? As I said, I used something years ago, but there's so many different.
Mm.
So, what makes yours different?
Yeah, my book, The Power of Personality, it's about the power of personality, right? But it's about finding that power through finding your specific value and understanding that value, even if it differs from other people, it's okay to have it. I
Hmm.
think that's what the big difference with my methodology is. Most methodologies focus on what you see on the outside. So, of course, like Jung started it all, right? And then that led to Myers-Briggs. Look, this is going to get really
Hmm.
nerdy, but basically, what we think of is like introversion, extroversion. Why do we have so many books
Right.
on introversion? Because it's easy to see, right? It's like, oh, this person talks a lot, that person does not. They're a little shy. Okay, let's put them in this category. My big problem with that is oftentimes our outward energy depends on the context. And so
Yeah.
I think it's a lot deeper than that. So which is why my book tends to focus on not necessarily the things we do and the things that we are good at, but it focuses on the reasons why we do those
Hmm.
things. Because I think that's
Yeah.
probably a better indicator of who someone is. Um, so I know like there's like a thing called Strengths Finder. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but that was a big one for like companies. And that was like very like, okay, this is your specific set of skills. But I'm of the belief that, our skills are dictated based on the things that we do the most. So it's
Yeah.
good to figure out what we like doing because what we like doing is the thing that we're going to enjoy doing the most and thus has the better chance of getting good at it, right?
Right, right. And I
So
always found too, when I got into corporate, a large corporate, and was trying to get into supervision and management, and they did Myers-Briggs, and they did one other, and they put a lot of their stock in how you did in that other one, and I can't even remember what it was, because it was like, but it really is only one uh, vision, or one look at who you are, and not really into how you react in certain situations and different things. And I truly agree with you about, what, whenever you're passionate about something, your personality, I think, blossoms so much so than if you were in a job that it wasn't interesting to you, it wasn't something that drove you. And so you might appear to be a totally different personality than you at your best.
right. And even extroverted people, or extroverted, because I'm not a huge fan of those two terms. But
Hmm.
let's say outgoing people can be outgoing in different ways, right? Like the person who enjoys giving TED Talks is not the same person who I always say enjoys taking body shots in Cabo. Those are two different people. They're probably
Yeah,
not gonna, if you switch places, they would probably feel actually a little shy. Like they'd be like, no, I'm good. I don't want to be in, like, get everyone's attention for that reason.
yeah.
And so I think it's kind of interesting because even in the things that we do, like I use writers as an example in the book. Like, lots of different writers out in history and lots of different personality types. And we can tell that even though they all did the same thing, which was write, they all wrote about different things based on the fact that they were writing for different reasons. And I think
Hmm.
those reasons are not easily found, but you can identify them if you understand personality types.
Yeah. And being a coach on speaking, it always interests me how I'll come across an author who is so wonderful with words and introspective thoughts and whatnot. And yet, when you go to interview them, they're so afraid to chat with you, and uh, kind of a different personality than you expect. That's why I try to work with authors, because it's like, you have such wonderful things, but for people to build a relationship with you, it has to be more than your words.
Yeah.
You need to know that person. And so you have to interview, and you have to get on stages, and how comfortable can you get to be able to do that, and have a conversation with that audience.
Right. Political historians always say that using debates as like the sole like arbiter of like what makes a good politician is ridiculous because if you took like Thomas Jefferson, who I think we can all say was probably historically a great president, and you put him in the middle of a debate stage, he would go silent because that just
Mm.
wasn't part of his personality. He wasn't used to speaking off the cuff. But if you give him a whole day or night, I guess, he'll write you the Declaration of Independence, right? So,
Yeah.
different personality types for different contexts. And you're right. Like if
Yeah.
you're put in a situation where you do have to speak, you know, like what is your personality type and what is the best way for it to engage with the audience? Because you have to do that in some form or fashion,
Hmm.
right? And
Yeah,
everyone has the ability
that's
to,
true.
but not everyone's Jack Black, so not everyone's gonna like jump out there and like grab people, right? But
No.
other people just say really funny things, and that gets people's attention right away. So
Yeah. So we talked about your typing methodology. Um, you said you use animals, and I know I've seen a couple different things that use animals, but talk a little bit about the different, like maybe one or two personalities, and what animal do you have for that, and why?
yeah, I'll start with the packs. Like I had mentioned, the gatherer pack, right? That value safety and security. That makes about half the population. And then there's another pack that makes up about a third of the population. So imagine these two packs of people make up about 85% of the
Yeah.
population. That's quite a bit. But I mentioned the hunters because their core value is excitement. They love to
Mm.
get excited about things. And I know sometimes they hear that and they think that sounds really superficial, but I don't really mean it just like surface value excitement. They just love to experience life 120%, but it's generally viscerally, right? So that's a
Mm.
hunter. You can imagine someone who values that and loves that feeling of adrenaline. coming into conflict with someone who loves security, right? Because the
Yeah.
same reason that someone rides a roller coaster because it makes them feel like they might get thrown off, which is exciting to them, is going to make the
Yes.
gatherer be like, why the hell would I want to have that feeling, right? Like, no, 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 I'm good. I'm going to sit here and watch you and I'll eat like a
Yeah.
churro.
Have a good time.
Yeah. And so within that hunter pack, I can mention one of the animals that's very common because they're out there it's called the fox. And I think when you call someone a fox, I think we already know, oh, okay, I know exactly what this person acts like, right? They're sly, they're shrewd, they're kind of, I won't say disingenuous, but maybe at their worst, they can be a bit of a shameless liar, but they will tell you
Hmm.
what you want to hear. And even though that might sound bad, that's exactly what marketers do. That's exactly what great politicians do. That's kind of exactly what lawyers do. Like there
Yeah.
are jobs out there that really, really work for a personality type like that.
Hmm.
Sales, agents, you talk to an agent and they'll have like multiple clients. Let's say you have a baseball agent and the owner will be like, "Oh, what do you think about this client?" They're like, "Oh, this is the best hitter in the majors." And then
Hmm.
that they'll ask about a different client and they'll say the same thing. He's the best
Yeah.
hitter in the majors. So that's exactly what a Fox personality type is like. They're just
Yeah.
like, they're
Wow.
going to say what is going to put them in the best possible position in that moment.
Mhm. Yeah.
But,
So
and, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, what would be another personality that's, uh, you know, uh, maybe somebody that is more needing of not really excitement, but I guess the solopreneur, we out there where we are okay taking some risk and putting ourselves out there, but maybe not totally, not a fox, not maybe a lion or something like so. What would that personality be?
You know, I didn't want to say that other personality types won't take risks. I think it's more for what's the reason for it, right? So foxes will, hunters always seem like they're taking, especially for a gatherer, unnecessary risks, but it's only unnecessary if you don't appreciate the reward, right?
Yeah.
Like I think at the end of the day, like if you tell a hunter, "Oh, why are you doing it?" They're like, "Oh, because it's fun." And then sometimes a gatherer might be like, "Well, it's not worth it for me to take the risk to have fun." But it is for the hunter. But gatherers will take risks too, because if they're protecting someone they love, right? Because it's all about
Mm,
safety and security, right? So
right.
they will do some pretty crazy things if the reward is worth it. And for them, the reward is always protecting family and their friends and kind of whatever life that they've created for themselves that they feel is stable. Where other personality packs, like let's say the shamans, they value self-knowledge. So they'll take a great amount of risk if they feel like they're learning about themselves, if they're
Mm,
discovering themselves, like, or if you're attacking a principle that they have, they will risk losing their job and tons of different bad things happening to them on principle. Where for other
yeah.
types, another type might be like, why? Like it's just words. Like you don't have to do that. Just like a hunter would just be like, just do what they want in this moment because tomorrow you're going to be in a position of power and then you can make them do what you want. That's their tactical mind, right? But often a time to shaman will be like, no, it doesn't feel right to me. I don't feel authentic. So I'm gonna hold my
Mm,
ground here, which can be very inspiring, which is what shamans do
mm,
for other people. It can also
yeah.
put them in positions where they're not particularly happy. So,
Mm.
there's a flip side to everything.
Right. So why do you think some common pop psychology ideas like extroversion and introversion, birth order, type A personality are overblown or worse, a myth?
Well, I'll definitely pull the birth order one because that's by far the easiest. I think we have all had, all it takes is having an older sibling who does not fit into like the stereotypical, like, oh, they're going to parentify, they're going to like make sure everyone's okay, all their younger siblings, right? And it's great that I mentioned the gatherers beforehand because that tends to work about half the time. Because half
Mm,
of the time, your older sibling, if you have an older sibling, is going to be a gatherer. Gatherers value safety, security, they value tradition, and they value duty, they value responsibility. And in their mind, if they are the oldest, they fit into that role where they have to like take care of their younger siblings, right? Make sure they're okay, make sure
right,
everything
right.
is all set in the household, help their parents out. So that works actually half the time. So I think that's why that pop psychology worked, right? Where people are like, oh yeah, my older siblings like that. Yeah, of course, all older siblings are like that. I'm like, well, no, it only works half the
Mhm.
time. Coming from someone who had an older sister who was a hunter, where they value excitement, that is not the case. She was always getting me in trouble. She was always like, "Hey, let's do this. Let's do this."
Yes.
And I'd be like, "Okay, sure, that sounds fun." And then we'd get in trouble, and then she'd like try to throw me under the bus and say, "Oh, Eric wanted to do it," you know, um, which is okay. Like I got along really well with her. But
Yeah.
it's funny, out of the three siblings, or I have two siblings, sorry, but out of the three of us, it's our youngest brother who's the one who asks, like, makes the or texts us all like, "What are we gonna get mom for her birthday?" Okay, we don't respond. So then he says, "Okay, what about this?" We don't respond. "Okay, I'm going to get her this," and then we respond,
Send
"Okay,
me
cool.
the money.
Yeah, we'll Venmo you." Okay, like because he's more conscientious because that's his personality. He's a gatherer, and that's
Yeah.
great. We all have our strengths, and we all bring those to relationships, right? We just can't expect that other people are going to be exactly like us. So.
All right. So we talked about work. We talked about you know, family. All right. How can personality traits help us in our romantic
Hmm.
relationships?
Everyone always asks that. Oftentimes it's people already in a relationship. They ask, "Oh, wait, what's my perfect match?" And I was like, "Wait, so you're asking me to tell you something that's gonna like kind of like give you a reason to not like your partner, or
Mhm.
like maybe justify some of the arguments?" Which actually that does help. Like knowing personality types, I wouldn't say justifies arguments, but helps people understand why they're not getting along with someone, right? And I think it's that understanding that you need to have, because having that understanding helps you realize I cannot change this person. If I try to change them, it's not going to be good for either of us,
Yeah.
right? Because there's a
Yeah.
reason why I like them in the first place, and usually it's because they're a
Yeah.
little different than me, right? So I think in general, I always tell people, look, your personality, there's no such thing as a soulmate when it comes to personality type. Like there's no perfect match. Now, theoretically, will other types communicate better with others? For sure. Like, and I think you can learn that. Like, hunters and gatherers, like I mentioned before, they tend to be very concrete types, so they see the world as it is. They tend to be like they tend to get information from what they see and hear, from their five senses. Shamans, which was a pack I mentioned before, they tend to be more abstract. They tend to view the world through their own intuition. A lot of their information about the world comes from inside. So they tend to communicate better with other abstract people, whereas the concrete people can communicate better with the concrete person. It doesn't mean that they can't like you can't have a relationship between the two, but oftentimes I think in relationships, communication is a big barrier, or at least conflicts of communication. So I think in general, I would say hunters and gatherers go really well together. And that's actually the most common husband and wife or spousal relationship coupling is a hunter gatherer, which is interesting because you think that mathematically speaking, it would be gatherer gatherer because they make up half the population, and gatherers like safety and security. So they're like the first people who, like when they're a kid, they're like, I want to get married, I want to have kids, I want to go to school, get a good job,
Mhm.
and do all those things. Um, but it's the hunter gatherer that's the most common coupling, which shows us that, a gatherer knows themselves and often probably knows that,
Mhm.
yes, that's another person who's like me and likes safety and security, and that's great. But I'm already me. That person over there who loves excitement and loves to go on that roller coaster, I kind of like them. I'm attracted to that, like that opposite nature, like is
Yeah.
appealing, and it shows in the numbers.
Yeah. So I've been married almost 48 years now, and I'm completely opposite of my husband.
Huh.
And it's funny, I have two daughters, and one daughter is just like me, and the other daughter is just like my husband. And my daughter, that's just like my husband, I have a I love both of them. It's out there, y'all. I love both of them. But my daughter, that's like my husband, she and I um, bond all the time really well.
Interesting. Versus the other daughter that's more like you.
Yeah.
Interesting. More,
So
maybe it's a little bit more, I won't say competitive, but like sometimes there's that feeling of like,
yeah,
oh wait,
so
I'm
yes, I would say there's that, um, there's that comparison, maybe not competitive, but the comparison type of thing, especially whenever I was younger, she and I looked a lot like, and so there was just no getting away with that. I also thought it was interesting you talked about the siblings. My I have seven in my family, and my oldest sister and I were the first two, and then there were four boys or three boys in a row, and And my brothers, I always felt bad for them because every teacher all along the lines would compare them to my sister and I. And they were boys and they were different and they should never have been compared. So it made it interesting. The youngest, the seventh child, it didn't go to the same schools, and so nobody knew any of us. And he, I think, had an easier time of it. But and there was also 20 years between he and I, so that's a big difference too.
Yeah, like with personality types, you really see it with sibling to sibling and parent to child. Like when
Hmm.
I owned an education company for about a decade, and I taught my teachers this methodology so they could work with their students better. And the teachers that picked it up like that were the ones who were parents because they said the exact same thing you said. They're like, wow, now I realize why I love all my kids equally. But you know what? My son kind of pisses me off sometimes. And like they started realizing, oh, it's
Hmm.
because they just have different personalities, and sometimes they just understand some of their children better than others, so they like them more. So they might like their daughter more than their son, or vice versa. But they always remind me that we love them equally. But
Hmm.
some,
There's that
yeah,
but.
yeah. Um, and you find
And
out
I
with
think,
siblings too. Um,
yeah, I think too, sometimes what upsets you is that you see a little bit of yourself in them and you think, oh God, I thought I taught them better than that. Yeah.
you start seeing
Not
your
to.
flaws, right? And you're like, oh, dang it. Flaws are
Yeah,
good to know.
that's,
Like, our flaws,
yeah,
the great thing about, and you can, if you read the book, you learn in the book is that, your flaws or your strengths come from your flaws, right? It's part of your personality type, right? So
yeah,
for every person who's really structured, responsible, and organized, they could also be probably fairly rigid sometimes and maybe not the most open-minded, right? And vice versa. Like you have the person who's really
right.
spontaneous and fun and flexible, but they also might be a bit of a flake sometimes. So, you got to take but it's good to know that, especially for yourself,
Yeah,
because you can work on those things. You don't have to change that,
right,
but you can work on those little flaws that you might have.
for sure. So one last question, it's time's flown by here, but how would you say that knowing your personality type can really help you in your career decisions and planning and navigation, I guess?
I've been telling this story a lot because it's so perfect, and it just happened to me. Wow, like not this New Year's, but last New Year's, I was shucking oysters with my cousin's kid, and he just graduated pharmacy school. And now I mentioned gatherers and hunters. A pharmacist is a great job for a gatherer because gatherers love safety and security. What's safer than being a pharmacist?
Yeah,
You have your
true.
shift. It's not always 9 to 5, but you have your set shift. You go there, you do your job. You get paid very well. However, my cousin's kid was not a gatherer. He was a hunter. Hunters like freedom. They like moving around. And we're shucking oysters. And I asked him like, "Oh, so what are you going to do now?" He's like, "I don't know. I just want to get a job though that I don't have to be in the same place all the time." And I was like, "You just went to pharmacy school. That is the exact opposite of what you're looking for." And
Yeah.
I was like, you probably shouldn't have done that. There's lots of jobs you can do that enable you to travel. But what I did recommend to him was like, maybe you should get into pharmaceutical sales, right?
Yeah,
Because
I was
that's
just
something,
thinking that. Yeah.
right? Because you get to travel. I'm like, you get to travel, you get to see different people every day. You're gonna have to hustle, but
Yes.
hunters do not mind hustling. Hustlers or hunters are hustlers. They will like, they're definitely play hard, work hard people. So they don't mind like, really pushing the envelope if they get rewarded for it. And I was telling him,
Yeah.
yeah, sales, do that. And he was just like, well, what if I don't want to waste all the education that I've learned in the last 3 years. I'm like, yeah, but you only get one life. You want to waste that, like doing something you don't
Yeah,
like.
really.
Um,
Really.
but anyway, that's probably the best example I give is if you know yourself and you know what you like to do, there are jobs out there for you. You don't have to take the ones that people tell you you should because they're safe, like take the one that you'll love for the rest of your life.
Yeah. I'm a big proponent of volunteering different places and just seeing what you like, or
Hmm.
putting off going to college for a year or two and taking temp jobs or whatever. Get an idea of what you're good at, what you like, and what really brings out your best personality, and then go to school for that. I didn't go to
Right.
college till I was late 40s, but
Yeah, I
yeah.
100% agree. That student that I told you about that I recommended dropping out of high school and getting her GED and just going to work, she ended up going back to college. And it was funny what she told me because she went to college maybe like 6 years after, so maybe in her mid 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And she was just like, wow, it's so funny because now I see these like 18, 19-year-old kids here who don't know jack squat about anything and they're just doing it
Mm,
reflexively because their parents tell them to do. I'm like, wow, that would have been me 5 or 6 years ago, but not now because I know what I want now. And it was a very specific goal that she had because she learned
mhm.
it, all those years
Yeah,
working where she discovered what she wanted to do. And it was
yeah,
just funny.
for
She's like, yeah, look
sure.
at all these dummies.
I know. And it made college so much easier. Not that it's not good to just go and get that education, but for me, it was really probably beneficial because I had all that life experience working since I was 20 up until 26 years made make college easy.
Yeah, I mean, doing homework assignments is no big deal when you've already have all this responsibility thrown on you, right? Like, I have
Yeah,
students who I'm always like, hey, school is like the best time of your life because if you screw up in school, there's only one person who's going to feel the heat. That's you.
yeah,
You're the only
right.
one. But if you're working and you get this, and you screw up working, you're going to mess it up for a lot of different people. And
Yeah.
guess what? That does not feel good. So just
Hmm.
know that school is ideally preparing you for that. But yeah, it's funny you did the opposite. It's kind of like
Hmm.
if you can dodge a car, you can dodge a ball. So you
Yeah,
did it that way
that's
too.
right.
Dodge a wrench, dodge a ball. Yeah, if you can do a job for 20 years, you can go to school.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's time now for me to share my screen that has the contact information for Eric. If you really enjoy this conversation and you think, oh my goodness, I want to do that assessment, I want to find out more about his book, then you can see all that in just a moment. I'm going to share my slide. So, Eric will tell you a little bit about um, his book in a moment, but the website where you can find that book as well as his other resources is projectutopia.com. On Facebook, Eric C. G. That's eric.c.g. LinkedIn is his name again, Eric G, and some crazy numbers. Uh, Instagram is the dash power dash of dash personality. Just search for Eric, you'll find him. And I will turn it over to Eric now to talk about his call to action, about that assessment and his book and the resources that you can find on that website. Eric?
Yeah, the CTA or call to actions on another website that's mine called utopiaproject.com, which you can also find the test on projectutopia.com. The reason why there's two sites is one's a WordPress site because on utopiaproject.com, which is a WordPress site, you also find a lot of articles written by myself and from other people talking about personality and like maybe
Mhm.
their own personal experiences within their personality type. But most importantly, you also find the test. If you click that link, take the test. I always say that I put the disclaimer on it. It's just a cookie cutter test that you take online. I did a lot of user testing, but just like everything else, I always recommend like reading the portraits of the personalities and seeing if they really connect with you.
Mm.
And I really recommend buying the book. And you can find that on the website. But really, on the website, there are just links to where you can purchase it online. You can buy it anywhere you buy
Mhm.
books. Amazon, if you want to give Jeff Bezos your money, or just go to your local Barnes and Nobles, order it there, or your local bookstore if you want to support independent bookstores.
Fantastic. Well, Eric, it has been just wonderful chatting with you. I just love hearing about the different personalities and, obviously, from doing personality testing in my early years, it's interesting and it's kind of, fun. It's a great way to learn more about yourself. And now when we talk about self awareness and all of those things tied to emotional intelligence, understanding your personality is just another way to give you greater insight to who you are.
Exactly. I'm 100% in agreement with that.
Yeah. So if you enjoyed this conversation again, do get Eric's book. And I want to thank Eric for being such a great guest today, sharing such enthusiasm over this topic that I think everybody has enjoyed. So, as always, I remind you and everyone that life is a journey and it's up to you to enjoy the ride. This is Vicki Noethling signing off.
Thank you for tuning into the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling, where we share impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Remember to visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast.